Welcome to Sib Spot. Our stories for today are from MaliciousCompliance. Story 1 is by Andrea Awakening. My piercing bothers you? Sure, I'll listen to you. This is from a few months ago when I started at my new job. I apologize in advance for any error. One of my first days, my manager said I had to remove my piercing. I have an industrial piercing, like this, which is a link to an image or picture. They have a piercing that goes through about an inch of the top of their ear. It's a bar and it has round studs on either side of it. Since I had the piercing on my interview and he was the one to interview me and didn't say anything then, I said I wouldn't. He let it go for a few days but then told me again. My reply this time was, all of my colleagues have at least one piercing in the upper ear, so why am I the only one that has to remove it? He said, I quote, "Does any of your colleagues have a stick that goes through the whole ear? No, just you, so remove it." Right after the end of that shift, I went to my piercer and got a set of separate but matching piercings that I can wear in the single holes, which I only ever do while working. The first time he saw me with this new piercing, he said we'd been through the conversation plenty of times and to just remove the piercings, to which I said, "See, you told me yesterday the problem was that I had one piercing all the way through my whole ear. Now I don't anymore. I have two separate piercings. All good." It's so good to see him still fuming about it after months and not being able to do anything, since I've technically removed the piercing that he wanted me to remove. Down in the comments by Daddy O'Fink. Good for you. Back in long lost history, the early 80s, I had a single pierced ear. Not quite avant-garde for a male in the 80s, but not normal either. Working at McDonald's and neither my manager nor the regional supervisor said anything. The franchise owner came in and told me to remove it. I can't, it's fresh and will close. He said, "Take it out and put a string in it." Looked him dead in the eye and responded, "No," and just walked away like the conversation no longer interested me. Surprisingly, I never heard another word about it. Lived at home still, so there was zero risk for me. Felt good. Screw these idiots that think they own you for minimum wage. I love that last sentence there. Because that's the truth. You're generally working a minimum wage job when somebody tells you to remove a piercing or cover a tattoo. Everybody needs to be exactly how my franchise expects them to be. They really don't, and just because some people are bothered by those things doesn't mean that you should have to change for them. Our next story is by Cryptodynamism. I really like that username for some reason. It kind of rolls off the tongue really well. Cryptodynamism. Clean it or get out of my house. Growing up, cleaning was always a major issue at home, especially with my mom. Nothing was ever done to her standards, and this led to a lot of fights. One summer day when I was a teenager, we had a cleaning day, during which my mom told me to clean the bathroom that my sister and I shared, top to bottom. It was my last chore, and I cleaned it, but not thoroughly enough. I was asleep in bed that night when my mom burst in, already in a bad mood, I guess, flipped on my lights and started yelling at me to clean the bathroom properly. That particular night, I was just too tired and done with being screamed at, and I said I'd do it tomorrow and let me sleep. This only made her angrier, and she told me to clean the bathroom now or get out of her house. She was likely bluffing. It was something she'd said often, but for once I felt bold enough to call her bluff. Besides, it was clear she wasn't going to let me sleep anytime soon. So I immediately got out of bed, grabbed my backpack, hopped on my bike, and effed off. My mom yelled at me the whole way out the door. I biked to my best friend's house, whose mom was more than happy to let me stay over, and I was so emotionally spent that I ended up sleeping until 5 p.m. There wasn't any super satisfying conclusion to this little rebellion. I stayed at my friend's house for 2 days, hanging out and going to the park while still in my pajamas. And immediately after that, I was already set to go on a week-long volunteer trip in a different state. My mom didn't text me or otherwise say a word, and when I finally returned home, she pretty much pretended like nothing happened. Because I knew there was no way she'd ever apologize or say that she'd overreacted. However, she never played the "obey me or get out" card again. It can actually be rough living with somebody who has higher standards of what should be than you do. OP's post got 2 people replying that had their own little stories to share. Underneath in the comments by Icy Silver Dragon. My mother loved that one too. Until my brother did what you did. He was gone for 6 months, though. My sister, Dad, and I all knew where he was, but my dad was tired of the BS, so we never told her where he was, safe at a friend's place who lived a few towns over. He was 17 at the time. That was a big reason I've never said that to my kids, no matter how mad I got. Good for you for showing her how toxic she was. Under that by I'm Nickelhead. My best friend in high school was kicked out by his parents. I picked him up. He stayed at my house for months. I had 2 beds in my basement bedroom, so plenty of room. He rode to school with me. My mom and stepdad loved having him and made sure he had everything he needed for school and life. Even made sure he was signed up for his SATs. He was polite, clever, respectful, and a really good kid. He played piano exceptionally well, so we'd show off when my parents entertained. He was already part of the family. He'd been attending all of our full family holiday and birthday parties for years. One day, his older brother showed up and they went for a long drive. He came back and said he's going back home as his parents wanted him back. They never addressed it or anything, just pretended it never happened. They were terrible parents. They would tell him not to drink alcohol and be home by 10 p.m. when he was 17. He'd go out, get drunk, ask if he could crash at a friend's place and they'd say no. Friends' parents would get on the phone and say he's really looking tired and probably shouldn't drive. That they'd make sure he'd go to church in the morning and be home by noon. No! Come home now! Other parents would try again. No! Send him home now! They would then drive his drunk behind home in his own car, followed with another car. Pull up to his driveway, wake him up, and tell him to pull in, park, and go inside. I had to do it so many times, too. Would have to find another car and 2 sober drivers at a high school party. We all tried to tell them he needed help, and they would deny. We told him not to drink, therefore he does not drink. He's a good Catholic boy. Underneath that by Omnicronos, the biggest drinkers I knew were Catholic. They'd go to Saturday Mass before going out drinking. Our next story is by Max Mex. This story is about a book that a lot of teenagers are encouraged to read in high school or told to read by teachers, that they say is a classic. It's one of the OP's favorite books, but it is literally my least favorite book on the planet, and every time I try to read it, I struggle to get through it. I just only remember from the entire book that I think kind of sticks with me is that the teenager involved in the story always thinks that other kids have mossy teeth. Any quote from any book we've read? You got it, ma'am. This happened about 5 years ago, but the memory came back to me as I was driving to work. I was 17, female at the time. I was in my senior year of high school. I was an AP kid, meaning that I took nearly all AP classes, college-level courses for high schoolers, during my last 2 years of high school. I really didn't want to be drowning in homework, though, so I opted to take General English in 11th and 12th grade, despite the many pleas of my teachers. I did take Honors English 9th and 10th grade, though. I didn't care enough about the subject to do all that extra work, even though I was smart enough to do it. That being said, my 12th grade English teacher really liked me because I was respectful but not a suck-up, and I actually did the work and didn't do the bare minimum. She was cool, albeit a bit quirky, like neon yellow and teal split-dyed hair on a 52-year-old woman. But she had a rule of no swearing, mostly because of the whole, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile mindset the teens have. I wasn't bothered by it because I didn't swear much, but she made it a big deal. Remember that for later. Now let's get to the actual malicious compliance. As a final project of sorts for the class, we had to make a memory box of our high school experience, and then we would all present our boxes to the class. We had to write letters to our past selves, have trinkets that represent each year, projects we were proud of, etc. One of the things we needed was a quote from a book we'd read in one of our English classes that remind us of each year. Remember how I said I took Honor English in the 10th grade? That's the year that honor students, and only honor students, read my favorite book, Catcher in the Rye. I love the writing style. I know Holden is insufferable. If you don't know the book, the main character has an existential crisis of the corruption of the youth and purity and other stuff. In one scene, he sees F.U. written in a school stairwell in a kid's handwriting, and he freaks out. Admittedly, I was struggling with my mental health a lot in high school, specifically in the 11th grade. So I thought a quote where the character has life throw a big F you in your face was an appropriate summary. I checked with my teacher not once, not twice, but 3 times to make sure any book we read in our English classes was fine. She was definitely suspicious and knew I was going to do something. I'm sure she thought I'd do a call out on my peers or something that was a bit more of a controversy in its commentary. But I was a goody one shoe, not fully 2 shoes kind of person, but I definitely was not breaking rules, so she wasn't worried. The rest of the story should be pretty clear now. When it was my turn to present, I showed off my trinkets and letter and monologue, and then it got to the quotes. I did my 9th and 10th grade quotes, and then I paused. I was worried if I should back out. But then I thought about when the next time I'd be able to boldly say those 2 words in front of a group of people with undivided attention again. So I took my moment and read my quote. It felt like one of those and everybody clapped moments. The class went crazy. Like the kids that never did a single assignment were on their feet cheering. The track and field kids were laughing and sharing oh my gods with each other like everyone was definitely paying attention now, and there was so much commotion that it took quite a few minutes to calm down. Keep in mind for everyone else, the smart good girl just broke the teacher's biggest rule in a hyper-public way. This was just a jaw-dropping moment for 17-year-olds. I quickly finished my last quote and hurried back to my seat. A couple kids dapped me up on my short walk, but the teacher looked pissed. I don't remember what happened afterwards. I'm pretty sure she said something disapproving and moved on. After class, I knew I had to apologize to the teacher, and she did say that she was disappointed, but that she also couldn't do anything about it because I was just doing the assignment, and I did ask several times beforehand. She kind of gave me a smirk when she said it, as she realized how deviously calculated it was, while still adhering to the rubric. I didn't get in any trouble and got full points on the assignment. It made me smile remembering this story. Hope you do too. This is a pretty epic story, OP, even if I think that The Catcher in the Rye is not. Our stories for today have come to a close. If you enjoy this content, please click like or subscribe or leave a comment below. Each of these things helps my channel grow in the YouTube algorithm and reach more people. Until we meet again, have an oasis day.